I think if we got a sound regime in, climate change regulatory program in globally, it could anticipate trading internationally. It will be complex to do. It is complex to do just in one country. But I think when you look not just at China, but some of the other developing nations too, it may be considerably more cost effective to get quick reductions there. It's going to take a lot of sustained focus across a number of economies to do it right. I don't think just the carbon trading with developing nations is like a silver bullet to make everything work better. It's got to be part of a pretty broad and complex scheme.
The United States and Europe and Japan all had a much longer period to develop their economies than China seems to have now, before environmental questions become a pressing constraint on its ability to develop the way the United States did, or Japan did, or Europe did in the past. In other words, nearly everybody seems to agree that they can't follow our model. But for a long time, the last 20 years at least, they have been following our model, and many people in China do argue that it's their right to be able to follow our model. After all, we got rich, and they want their chance to get rich. How do you, as looking at the environmental side of the problem, grapple with some of those broader political issues? Can we, as Americans, tell China the way they need to develop their economy? Do they, in fact, not have the right, or should they think they don't have the right to develop the way we did? Do they have to figure out a new way? What kind of responsibility do we have for teaching them the new way? How do we grapple with telling Chinese people now that you can't do what we did?
I don't think you do. I mean, I don't think that works. I don't think that's the way it will work. I think China will figure out quickly why developing in a different way is smarter, and why it is healthier, why they can make more money doing it. So I think I don't think it's our responsibility to do anything other than, if those of us who care, to share our knowledge and thinking and ideas. And but I think to have a better quality of life and have the economic growth, yes. The question is how you decouple that economic growth and improvement in quality of life from environmental degradation. And if we believe that there is a way to do that, which I'm a technology optimist, I do believe that you can have that. Maybe at some point you can't. But we have so much improvement we can make in terms of how we use our resources without sacrificing quality of life for economic growth. Let's at least do that. I mean, so to me, 50% efficiency, or reducing the energy intensity of the economy in China, by multiple factors, is doable. So there is a I think a question of prioritization. I think it's a question of focus, and I think once China, India focus on the need to do this, it's going to get done.
Go ahead.
It's interesting. It was 2 days ago. We were in a session with Peter Seligman, who's the founder of Conservation International. And he made a comment that really resonated with me. He said, unless you raise the awareness of the people, that's the only time that they will demand it of their government. And so as a business, Wal-Mart, we're not in the business of policy making, but we do focus on 3 stakeholders, which is our customer, our suppliers, and our associates. And so, for instance, in China, we're doing everything we can to raise awareness of the sustainability issue. In stores, for instance, we launch a partnership. I mean, these are just examples, like with Energizer and non-food. And we encourage battery recycling among our customers, so we have bins in every single store. I mean, so from small exercise like that, you know, to finding products that are sustainable and that are of good value to the Chinese consumer. Our job is to raise awareness and to provide those options to the Chinese consumers.
I was just going to add, it isn't really just about growth. It's also about human health protection. We know that getting lead out of the environment, out of gasoline, has made a huge contribution in the U.S. We know the asthma cases in the U.S. drop dramatically in the cities that have cleaner air rather than dirty air. So it's not about the developed nations telling the developing nations they cannot grow. It's also about understanding in 2006 an awful lot about the interplay between the environment and health that we didn't know 35, 40 years ago when our own laws were just passed. So there is a global commons issue, definitely, particularly in issues like climate change or the ozone layer or the oceans. But there's also a lot of domestic health implications of pollution that I think all nations need to appreciate. And then lastly, one of the things the U.S. has learned, I can speak profoundly from DuPont's experience, is remediation is very, very expensive. And once your water is polluted or your air is polluted, the cost of cleaning it up can be considerably higher than the cost of polluting it in the first place, or not polluting it in the first place. So I think there's a lot of good reasons that nations like China need to be learning from our mistake and not following our experience.
Mm-hmm. Are there, has any of you, one person asked, come across examples of things that China is doing that are actually more environmentally sophisticated than the U.S. approach? Have they invented any new products? Do any of their leading exports surpass U.S. standards in terms of, you know, efficiency, energy efficiency, or do any of their regulatory standards sort of surpass those of the U.S.? In other words, is there any sign that China gets it in some areas more than the U.S. does?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. Okay.
Well, I think certainly the fuel economy standard, the question then is one of enforcement and actually implementing the law. So I think the renewable standards, the fuel economy for vehicles, and others are examples where they are getting the laws on the books, but the question is, will they be followed and implemented? And the other, just from my own, when I was in Shanghai, seeing the maglev train going to the airport was quite remarkable, and you know, being able to go to advanced technologies like that and implementing them, it was to me nice to see, and I haven't been to Beijing recently, but adding all the transit that they will add because of the Olympics is a interesting, and I don't know all the details, but I think the fact that investments like that are being made are things we could learn from in terms of doing things differently. And I think some of their new cities that they're looking at, making their brand new cities that they're developing green and sustainable, are other examples of leadership. Those come to mind, but I'm not. My colleagues at NRDC probably have even more. But I do think there are things that are being done.